Welcome to Esoterotica's Pervertibles and Paraphilia, November 25th, 2020. The word paraphilia came into use in 1903 and describes the experiencing of intense sexual arousal from atypical objects, situations, fantasies, behavior, or individuals. But no consensus has ever been reached on the difference between an unusual sexual interest, their way of referencing kink or fetish, and a paraphilia. One source cites as many as 549 types of paraphilia. Human sexuality and arousal is literally all over the place and heavily dependent on our psychological and social norms. The subversion of those norms call to us over and over. We begin our foray into the unusual with, well, the perfect person for this theme. This is just Shannon.
A chilly morning, awake, alone, the wet spot on the empty side of the bed still damp, tacky thighs and scents tied to memories of last night. He's gone, back to work, but left behind his kilt, a thick, black, pleated thing, and, just for style, chains dangling off of it. Calling back to those worn-on wallets not so long ago, these chains, however, are thinner, more intricate, delicate links woven into one another expertly, but there's just enough girth to... No, I couldn't. Could I? Reach over. Unclip a long chain. Just for closer inspection, you see, to sate my curiosity. The tiny metallic rings, so interlinked, artful repetition, forming a ribbed effect that demands exploration. Hold the chain up high, end dangling down. Test this new possibility on belly flesh, only to pull immediately back at the cold snake slithering on skin, the metal amplifying the morning chill. The length gathered between two warm palms, a quick correction. Then, lifted again, this time the dangling end, pointed at a new destination. Lower it down. Let it slip bit by bit into the wet line between pussy lips. The trimmed fur there slick enough to let the links ease down, till they tickle cheeks, then up again, rumbling metallically, collecting a coat of wet, earning entry with a little help of a free hand, gripping the dangling end, to pull delightfully until the thin, heavenly line slips against clit and slides a thrumming beat against that precious bud, bringing bliss in a rhythmic clip, increasing as hands work to run the chain back and forth across it. Oh, whoa. Just the right pressure now, this brushing rumble, clinky, kinky against bits, links destined to rejoin the kilt again, but not before. The rush makes it solely a fashion accessory, no more. Now there's two wet spots.
As with all our provocateurs, pansexual explores his sexuality and desires with an eye for detail and ravenous panache.
Hello out there in Esoterotica land. This is your resident sexy beast pansexual. And something I've always been fascinated by are pens. And I have definitely a love of writing, and especially a love of using a pen on somebody's skin to draw out the central stories that are hidden within them. The stories of cosmic things, the stories of who they are, the stories of things they've yet to learn, and the things that I am just discovering. So here are the stories of one skin. And the stars opened up as the darkness came forth, Letters begin to curl themselves in the pores of her skin, a pen to every curve, a stain of ink to tell the story true, this poem of cosmic beginnings, ushering into existence the serpent midnight. Droplets slithering from purple tip down the curve of bladed shoulders, caressing a spine that shivers at the touch of claws and silken forked tongues. And the cosmos knew the peace that comes from sleep. My lips brush their skin. As another word comes into focus, another piece of a sensual puzzle fits in place. This is one story that begins in her skin and has no end. As it dreamt the world into being. You are the lock, this purple ink pen the key to unlock a story of beginnings, a cosmic tale, leaping from your flesh, our naked bodies satiated in the afterglow of fucking and symboled imprints of our language. Birthed forth from the coupling of imagination and skin. Turn over, lover. I shall grab another pen. Let's see where the next tale begins.
The tastes and textures of what we are capable of feeling is often what leads us to delight in our otherness. This next human is a shining example of that in full effect. This is Otter Goodfellow.
The rites of summer solstice. Let the cup of your mouth runneth over, spilling kisses across my skin with such heat. Summer comes 6 months early this year, because the sun is eager to prove that it too can burn my skin. Run your fingers through my dark curls, spreading like tree root tendrils through rich, dark soil. Take hold. Cultivate me. Be not contented drawing those soft humming sighs of July evenings on porch swings from my throat. Pull forth the moans of oaks, bending beneath hurricane winds, the groaning of the trunk of my spine as it bows so far it might just break my body out into a sweat like lake water beating on my skin after diving in with half my clothing still on. Peel it off. Reveal me warm and slick. Let the wetness drip like sweet blackberry wine from your lips against mine. Do not stop. Let your hand open inside with all the gentle force of plum blossoms determined to bloom in February. Come to me draped in August.
This has been a hard year, and it seems like a good time for all of us to thank all of you, our listeners from around the world on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and all of you who found us on Stitcher. If you've been enjoying the shows, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for even more of our very sexy content. Be safe, everyone. You know the rest.
Ame Sansavant tells of a paraphilia not often mentioned when we discuss sexy acts that are outside of the norm. She reminds us, as she always does, that experience and sensation are what sexy is all about.
Haircut. This story is true. Well, as true as I can make it. Some of the details have been changed, not to protect the innocent because no one in the story is guilty, but because, to be honest, I have a spotty memory. But hey, what is a story well told if not the truth with some embellishments to liven things up? So, this is a true story, just cut and styled. Sometime during the spring of 2008, I sold my hair to pay our rent. Or rather, I sold the experience of cutting my very long hair to a complete stranger to pay our rent. The post-Katrina economy was not great, and even as the city had plenty of work, most of it just didn't pay quite enough. So I did some research, found a website entirely devoted to selling hair, and after about a month and a half and more than a few offers of $1,000 for videos of me having my head completely shaved, no thank you, I got a very intriguing and polite email from a man who would be in Florida in a week's time. For over a decade at that point, I'd been letting my hair grow long, and it was just past my ass. I wore it wrapped up in a bun pretty much all the time, and occasionally Jason would comb it out and trim the ends. So why not sell it? It's not like I did anything with it anyway, and besides, if it comes down to having shockingly long hair and a place to live, which would you choose? So that is how, after a Tuesday overnight shift, I was the third shift manager at a small neighborhood diner. We miss you, La Peniche. Jason and I ended up driving from New Orleans to a small town outside Gainesville, almost 8 hours away, to let what turned out to be a tall, skinny, very nervous man in his late 40s fulfill, though he never came right out and said it, a fantasy he had probably had much of his adult life. To hold 3+ feet of a woman's hair in his hands while slowly, gently cutting it off. According to his emails, his ex-wife had very long hair, and he had expressed his desire to cut it for her. And while they talked about it on and off for years, it had just never worked out. And though they were now no longer together, he still thought about it, cutting a woman's hair, and after years had finally set out to do it. This was, I think, the selling point for me on this potentially very questionable adventure. It wasn't a control thing. He didn't just want to chop some random woman's hair off. He wanted to cut it with consent. He needed it to be okay, to be wanted. It was part of it for him. He didn't even want to keep the hair. It was about the experience, not the trophy. In words, he was so tentative and subtle about it. Until we got there, I was unsure whether it was really a sensual thing. But when I arrived with Jason, even though the man knew he was coming with me, he tried to call it off. He became extremely apologetic and said he would still pay me, but it was okay if I had changed my mind and not to worry about it. And thank you for coming all this way, but it all clicked into place. I imagine this man living outside of DC, some lucrative but unwaveringly dull, now that he's done it for 20 years, technical government job, newly-ish divorced, having never explored the desires that to him seemed unusual, that he may not have understood why he had. It had taken all his courage to get to this point, and now that he was faced with it, he was unsure, embarrassed, willing to pay the money just for a chance to escape and forget about it. But you and I both know that's not how these things work. Longings like this that you've had for years don't just go away. And besides, I wasn't going to take his money for nothing, and I had driven all that way, and we needed the money. I looked him in the eye and said, no, it's okay. He's cool with it. It's fine. I want my hair cut anyway. We're already here. It's okay. Let's do this. And as if on cue, Jason too chimed in. Really, man? That's why I'm here. I cut her hair all the time. It's great. You should do it. Then the man, still not knowing what to do with himself, trying to protest, Jason turned me around and started weaving my hair into a loose braid. He described what he was doing, simultaneously putting the other man at ease while also tempting him to feel my hair with his hands. The way it would slide across his fingers, move against his palms. Then the man said, okay, but he would just watch. He would watch Jason cut my hair. I sat in a chair and behind me with a pair of very large silver shears. Jason said to the man still across the room, are you sure? At least come over here so you can see better. But as soon as the man crossed the room and stood behind me, Jason put the scissors in the man's right hand, wrapping his own over them, and with my braid in his left, began very slowly to cut. Here, see, it's okay. Another small movement of the scissors, and here, you hold this. And I felt Jason put my braided hair in the other man's hand. He was shaking, but he didn't stop cutting, centimeter by centimeter, slow movements, making it last, cutting just a little bit, then moving the shears to cut another piece. Later, Jason told me about a quarter of the way through, he took his hand away and let the man continue on his own. He shook the entire time, but by the end, we could both tell his snips had become more relaxed. Easier. I still feel like that's one of the coolest things Jason and I ever did. Don't get me wrong, that man did a hack job on the back of my head, but I think about it. If even for just a second, every time I get my hair cut, his shaking hands betraying how much he wanted it and how something so normal, so everyday, giving a haircut in a kitchen in suburbia, could have been something someone had waited for, wanted as long as they could remember. And how good it felt to be the person that finally let him have it.
Harvey may be our high holy human of paraphilias here at Esoterotica. Here's the piece that inspired the theme.
Hey. You know, it was funny. I was listening to that and I was like, wait, but what if I, had sex with the sentient, physically manifested form of Bobby Fresh, which is what I call the grocery store next door, Bobby Fresh. You can use that, by the way. Just feel free. Take Bobby Fresh from me. It's fine. So I wrote this piece a while ago called About Paraphilia, and it's published in one of the anthologies over there. And I went to rewrite just an intro for that, and this isn't it, but I incorporate part of what you may have read in there already. But so this is About Paraphilia 11/20/18. So this one time, and this was years ago, I was dating a man and I noticed that he really liked to rub his eyes. He would just get all up in there and he looked so satisfied. And how he would moan softly while he did it it just kind of destroyed me a little bit. I wanted what that hand had. And so I tried to role play as his hand and get him to role play as his eye. Oh my God, yes. I want to fill you up completely. Explore every part of you. Oh, is that the red spot? Right there, yeah. He found this confusing, I guess. But but he found a lot of things that I would do in bed confusing. And to be fair, when I whisper in a man's ear while I'm riding on top of him, tits pressed and close to his chest, I'm a man, in a soft feminine voice, it is meant to be confusing. But I love a man who loves a confusing boner, and how else am I supposed to find them? The conventional wisdom about paraphilias is that they're mostly a guy thing, or rather, that most paraphilias are more common in men than in women. I guess I should define paraphilia now. Paraphilia means that you're aroused by atypical objects, situations, people. So it covers everything from sadism and masochism to gender swapping to exhibitionism and voyeurism to fetishes of all kind to age play. So most people, or maybe just everyone I know, or it can mean that you need something extremely specific and probably unusual to have an orgasm. So, most people, or maybe just everyone I know. I don't know. Or maybe just me. I don't know. The word comes from Greek, para, meaning beside or aside, and philos, meaning loving. It was first used in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM. I don't know if you're familiar with that. In 1980, as a morally neutral and more dignified label than perversion, to which it is nonetheless etymologically similar. Paraphilia has been on my mind a lot lately. I was looking through the Chuck Tingle offerings online. Chuck Tingle, if you don't know, has written such titles as these. I don't get credit for these punchlines. These are just the titles of his books. Slammed in the butt by the living leftover chocolate chip cookies from my kitchen cabinet. I just really like thinking about those cookies. I'm gay for my living billionaire jet plane boyfriend. And pounded in the butt by the sentient physical manifestation of the year 2016. Which was quite a year. There's a lot to work with there. There's a lot to work with there. But yeah, it turns out that the way these titles are collected is Chuck's Living Object Tinglers, Volume 1, all the way up to currently 23. They each have 3 or 4 in them. Anyway, I didn't have a name for what I like to do or even a way of thinking about it really. And I'm pretty sure that this is an insane sentence, but yes, I think part of my gender expression is living object. I think that's a pretty good way to describe it, though, living object. I like to roleplay as a living object. Even if a saber-toothed tiger dentist who is also a ghost isn't an object per se, it kind of is for these purposes. To further explain, sometimes I want to behave as or be treated by a saber-toothed dentist who is also a ghost, not like a whole 3-dimensional person with feelings and the ability to reason and a rich inner life. A real person with feelings and any level of medical knowledge or sense at all knows that you don't try putting a dentist's stick in your mouth to fix a toothache, and when that doesn't work, definitely curing the toothache by pounding the subject in the butt. I know you're wondering, but what if he is also a saber-toothed tiger and you suspect he may be a ghost? But I think that's for you to figure out on your own. Does this make sense? I don't know. Do you know what a beholder is? Last week, I was the classic Dungeons & Dragons monster called a beholder, which is a big eyeball with tentacles all over it. Clearly the sexiest monster and definitely the best monster to roleplay. I mean, what all does one even need from a partner other than eyes and tentacles? And also, last week, I was the time tunnel that the TARDIS goes through at the beginning of the Doctor Who intro. Polymorphous. Polymorphous perversion means that some days you're the tentacle and some days you're the hole. I sat down to just rewrite the beginning of my prior dispatch on paraphilia. It's just a brief update, but it seems that it has turned into a whole new piece. A bit light on the hardcore, though, by my standards, so I thought I'd keep the original impetus for the piece at the end. You know, to honor the sick perverts who, in their outrageous inappropriateness, have earnestly fucked the backs of my knees in times gone past. I still swoon for their hard dicks. If you've heard this before, you've already heard the sexy word I learned for knee backs. There's a whole word for the backs of the knees. It's poplets. Poplits. Isn't that a great word? As in, get a load of the poplets on that chick. Quite the flirty, cutesy little word there, I think, poplet. It begs to be said out loud. I know, you all are just waiting until you can say it out loud. I know, yeah. Poplets, I'm telling you, yeah. So what I want to do for this fantasy, as some of you may know already, you may have heard this already, but anyway, what I want to do is lay on my belly and bend my knees, both knees, because I want 2 guys to fuck the backs of both of my knees at the same time. Lots of lube, of course, lube galore. I want them to push down on my legs to squeeze my knee backs tighter. I want them to lose themselves in the backs of my knees. And yes, also I want to feel the sensation of 2 dicks rubbing on my poplets at the very same time. I want to look back and see their faces lost in the backs of my knees. At first I make feints at playing it cool, super nonchalant and all whatever perverts, but it's just a tease. Unless otherwise specified, I grin and giggle and am extremely pleased and amused with this whole thing. They squeeze and grab my ass with varying levels of roughness. I squirm and writhe for them and pant and make hysterical noises of pleasure and approbation. They push their fingers into me, sometimes both at the same time. Yeah. One rubs 2 wet fingers across my clit as the fingers of the other find the most dramatic place inside of me. Sometimes their eyes are closed, but sometimes they look at each other, vaguely discomfited, not making eye contact. Until they do. I see the red-faced, breathy look they give each other, and they look at me. They see my terrifically pleased I'm a pervert smile, and they fuck me harder, grab my ass harder, and push their fingers into me like they're touching what is theirs. They grunt and moan. I turn this way and that, looking at each of them in turn. An embarrassment of riches. I prompt them to Eiffel Tower over my legs. I thrill as they touch each other and we laugh. That's the cornerstone of the fantasy. But if we feel like taking this to the next level, obviously the subsequent thing to do is turn up the dial on the gay. I ask them to kiss. I ask them to kiss for me. I say, please, would you please just kiss for me? I really want it. I say as I touch myself in fast motions that put a small weight into my voice. When they look each other in the face, just then, I say, thank you, thank you, thank you, in one of the more demure registers of my maybe I'm dying voice. And maybe we're all dying, just a little bit. They fuck slower for a few moments. One of them reaches out and touches the shoulder of the other one, kind of squeezes it between his fingers, like he's both unsure of the skin and luxuriating in it. And they kiss over my knees, still fucking me, but slowly, haltingly. They kiss like they want to kiss each other. Maybe not all the time, but yes, just then they do. They break the kiss. I slowly move my legs closer and closer together, and finally, what I've wanted all along, their cocks rub against each other between my legs. Like two dicks passing in the thighs. The other dick is nearly indistinguishable from the pressure of the thigh and the calf, but they do feel it. The counterpoint of its movement, they know. Obviously, at this point, they come all over my legs and both their own cocks and the other fellows. Oh, and they're probably uncircumcised. I hadn't thought of that until now, but it turns out they were all along. My thighs are a big sloppy mess of lube and sweat and cum and my own wetness. They both flop down on either side of me and rub the cum into my skin, the skin of my ass. And you know what? I'm feeling pretty grand. And so that is my filthy sex fantasy.
And with that, we come to the end of Esoterotica's Pervertibles and Paraphilia. Sex and your relationship to it doesn't have to live within the confines of the expected. Just remember to sanitize, have lube and scissors close by, and consent, consent, consent. Please join us in 2 weeks with our theme, Desirous Dreams. Making manifest the desires of your dreams into reality is, well, let's just say it's the only reason worth growing up. From now till then, remember that the act of dreaming is powerful magic. On the psychological side, it connects us to the places we are avoiding, brings the bizarre into the realm of touchable, and is a major part of processing our lives. And the act of daydreaming, of hoping, well, that's just the first step. Music tonight was A Road Less Traveled by Ketsa. If you are able, please drop a tip in the digital hat. We would all appreciate it. Thank you for listening to Esoterotica, erotica from New Orleans. As always, a sign-off from our own, Ame San Savant.
Other than that, I know we can't wait to see you so very soon, but in the meantime, stay safe, stay sexy, and get fucked! All of our online shows are produced by Jeff Munsterman and Shadow Angelina. Sound recording and mixing by Jeff Munsterman. All rights reserved by the provocateurs of Esoterotica.